Hello, welcome to another weekly update. I hope you're well. Hope you had a good weekend and ready to start the new week. Couple of things to talk about this week. We've got some things that were kind of talked about. I talked about last week a little bit as they came out of Microsoft Inspired, but we've got some more detail about them and some new things as well. So yeah, some things to talk about. So let's get into it. First thing, there's an update to the Microsoft Graph .NET SDK. So this is going to be of value to any developers who work with the Microsoft Graph. If you do any of that in .NET, you really should look at the SDK. It has come on loads. It's now V4, which is now GA. There's a number of things that it can do that can really kind of help either get you started faster or just take a load of complexity out of your application. For instance, a lot of the auth work is covered nicely for you in the SDK as well as a lot of sort of common scenarios. And so it's really worth looking at that to see if there's value for you. So new things that are in this version. So the first one is, I didn't even realize actually this was in the SDK, but the SDK supports notifications. So, and this is change notifications, so like webhooks. So that's a thing that you can do inside Microsoft Graph for some workloads. You don't have to just call the get commands to get the data. You can subscribe to change notifications. I've talked about that before. What's interesting with that is that you can either do that where Graph will just tell you there's something to go and look at and give you a URL to go and get that information. You can also configure it so you get that rich data inside the initial payload. It's a bit tricky to set up sort of by yourself. You need to do it with certificates and some bits and pieces. That's all now built into the SDK, making it much easier for developers to get started with. So what does that mean? It means less traffic for you because you don't have to make continual hops to go and get the change. Once you've got the change notification data, you don't need to go back and get the actual detail of what was changed or what's new. You get it in the initial payload. And that's all had for you, the kind of encryption that's needed, because obviously this is now sensitive data that's being sent back to you. And Graph wants to make sure that it's sending it to the right subscriber and that it's not a fake subscription and all that sort of stuff. So there's a layer of security over that. A lot of that is now abstracted for you by the SDK, so that is super interesting and will definitely improve application performance. So you should definitely look into that. If you do anything with change notifications, really consider using the SDK at this point because completely kind of makes sense, and they've abstracted a lot of that kind of slightly complicated functionality. Another new thing which I'm kind of really excited about, they've really improved the testability of the Graph Service Client. So the Graph Service Client is what you use inside the SDK to go and call Graph. That's now there's now the interface for that has now been kind of replaced really and removed. And all the methods have been made virtual. So that means that if you use a mocking framework, they can override them. So that's kind of interesting because now it means that you can test your application with a fake graph. You can mock graph responses, you can mock graph objects, and it's not necessary to build up a whole load of kind of real users or real data in order to test your application. You can mock a lot of that stuff. Super interesting. So another solid reason to start using the Graph .NET SDK. Wow. So that's kind of 2 for 2 right now. Other thing. Okay, so OData. So my Graph uses OData quite a lot to specify and filter and sort data that comes back. And what's been kind of an unusual side effect of that is that the OData type property is it gets set a lot by you see it a lot in Graph. It's OData type, and sometimes it causes confusion because it's not kind of really part of the data. It just kind of gets sent along for the ride to help kind of OData do its job. Anyway, they're taking it out of the SDK now. Previously, so in version 3 onwards, they've specified the OData type kind of by default. It's been set in the SDK for you. And that has started to cause some problems with serialization sometimes. So they're taking it out, basically. They are going to include it where it makes sense. So if it needs to be there, sometimes that happens if you've got I don't know, like you've got like a base reference that is referenced as a type on another type, or you need to disambiguate, or you've got an abstract type or something like that where the graph is going to need more information, then they will add in the OData type where it makes sense, but then they're going to stop putting in everything by default. All right, so kind of some really good reasons to cut over and start using this V4 version that's now GA. If you're not using the Graph SDK, you really probably should go and have a look at it. Some of the problems that you might be hitting if you're just doing HTTP request response and working with that, some of those questions, some of those problems you're hitting around testability, around running at scale, especially change notifications running at scale, you may want to go and check out the .NET SDK to see whether it's a better kind of solution for you. So that sounds exciting. That's out now. There's a documentation page, there's an upgrade guide, there's a migration process to kind of give you examples for what's new and how you can add it into your code. Lots and lots of fun things there. And really, like, I think the benefit here of getting on the latest version here and really using the SDK at all is that it takes a lot of complexity out of your code. And takes a lot of time off your hands building things that the Microsoft team have already built for you. So definitely worth checking out. Okay, what else is happening? So the public preview is out of the SharePoint Framework 1.13. And why is this exciting? Well, a few reasons, but the main one is it has Microsoft Viva Connections Extensibility support. So this was talked about at Inspire last week, and now it is out. So if you write SharePoint parts, I'm afraid I'm going to hold my hands up and say that is not me. I'm not great at SharePoint Framework web parts and stuff like that. So, however, I know it's a really popular thing. It's a great way of kind of bootstrapping Teams applications as well. If you've got a load of SharePoint stuff out there already, or you're really well versed in building SharePoint components, you can kind of take your SharePoint parts and expose them in Teams. So that's interesting as well. And specifically for this one, with this release 1.13, then you can build for Viva Connections as well. There's a solution sample as well that you can go download. There's a video you can watch. There's all sorts of things. So this is interesting. There's another video about a solution around COVID check-ins. So a self-attestation form for employees to kind of self-attest that they are free of symptoms before going into the office. And there's another video around executive room reservations. So plenty of examples and samples there for how you can use some of these new Viva Connection Extensibility points. So so if that's of use to you as a SharePoint Framework developer, then make the most of it and start building for Viva today. Okay, let's change tack slightly away from the slightly more technical to the possibly slightly less technical, and not necessarily less technical, but just of more interest to more people maybe. Let's talk about hybrid, and it's the buzzword of the season, but specifically right now, hybrid meetings with Microsoft Teams. So we're in a place where some people are going back to offices and some are continuing to work remote. So we're seeing many more hybrid meetings take place. And lots of people are providing advice and guidance for exactly how that works. Microsoft have come up with a lot of documentation already around some of the science behind this, about how hybrid working should be done, and some of the kind of slightly more academic approaches to hybrid working. But I thought this was interesting, this blog post. So this is Scott Hanselman. So he has a good way with words. He has a good way of explaining things. He's got a slightly unique viewpoint on this because he is normally a remote worker from his home office. So he's been doing this for a while, and he's usually been the remote person in a hybrid meeting in that sense. So he has a lot of kind of sort of experience doing this stuff. But also Mads Torgersen has done a blog post and about some of this stuff. And so the two have combined. So Scott has combined some of the things Mads has said and added his own kind of bit on top. So the result for me is a very readable blog post with some good tips in it for doing hybrid meetings. So I recommend it to you to have a skim through and see if there's some tips in here that you can take away. I think these things are worth reading, even if you do loads and loads of meetings and you're super comfortable with how you run meetings. It's kind of less about the how-to. It's more just think about this person, think about the experience of people remotely, think about the experience of people in the office. Are there things you can do slightly differently to how you're used to doing them to kind of get everybody feeling like they're involved? So that's a blog post you can go and read. It's more of a kind of a longer read, I suppose. Something to do maybe kind of when all the work is done for the day and you just want to kind of relax a little bit and read some content, then I'd recommend that blog post to you. And finally, another one a bit like that actually is this one by Starley Hansen. And the reason for this blog post is that we have just ticked over the Skype for Business Online kill date, which was July 31st. So Skype for Business Online is retiring July 31st, not on premises, not anything like that. Not, if you've got Skype for Business server, that is fine. That continues. I think there's some rumblings about it becoming a subscription service, but I'm going to leave that for a different video. But this is about Skype for Business Online, and Starley has put together a humorously titled blog post, Goodbye Skype for Business Online, you won't be missed. Anyway, he's kind of talking about the options that you have. So it's a lot of a hybrid scenario. And again, in this sense, I mean hybrid as in part Skype for Business and part Microsoft Teams, not part working at home and part working in the office, which is what I was previously talking about with Scott's blog post. But yeah, this one is things you can do, and this kind of rather long but detailed bullet pointed list is what you can do if you want to migrate from Skype for Business server with telephony to Teams and direct routing. This is kind of outside of my comfort zone. This is very IT pro heavy. This might be of use to you if you're listening to this and you want to know how you can take your existing Skype for Business server set up and make it a bit more hybrid and get a bit more involved in the team stuff. This is how you can do that. And there's a full article as well that Starley's done at Practical 365, so you can go and check that out as well. But yeah, it's kind of happened with not too much of a fanfare, I suppose. Skype for Business Online has quietly gone away. I think by this point most people had moved over. There are a couple of interesting development points. I called them out in a blog post a few months ago. Things that you won't really be able to do anymore. So we'll have to kind of wait and see what happens with those. All in all, kind of interesting couple of days, interesting week of news and some new things, and obviously some things going away and some advice. So whatever it is you're doing this week, I hope you have a great one. And thanks very much for watching. Let me know any comments, obviously in the comments below. And I continue work on the book that I talked about a couple of weeks ago. I'm almost at the point where I think I could I could probably publish it, even though it's nowhere near ready, but it is it could be a minimally publishable state. I'm at around 5,000 words, so I am committing to working on it kind of every week. So fingers crossed that continues. And keep an eye out for that when it comes. But yeah, have a great weekend, have a great week even, and I will talk to you again next week.